welcome everyone to the second annual Galluccio Associates Breakfast. I've been very, very excited about this event for the last 2 months, and this is a great turnout. I know it's tough getting up in the morning, but we really, really appreciate bringing you together at this time, and I want to say, first of all, thank you again to all of you who have come out this morning to honor our awardees. At this time, I'd like to have Renee Rancourt from the Boston Bruins organization come up and honor us with the national anthem.
And can I ask everyone to rise, and if you know the words, please don't sing. Except my ex-wife here, she can sing, yes. Just kidding, just kidding. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Play ball!
Renee Rancourt. Renee, thank you very much. And I have to say, Renee Rancourt, when we call him every year, we're going to call you One Ring Rancourt, because when I call that house One Ring, hello, this is Renee. And it's great, but I have to tell you, Renee was a little nervous this morning. He said he hadn't performed in front of a crowd this large in a very long time.
With a joke, don't quit your day job.
Are you going to be staying for a few minutes? Okay, that's great. Again, I want to say thank you very much. You know, when we started talking about doing this event, the two things that we thought were most important was, one, making sure that we get out and honored some of the unsung heroes in this city. And we all know them. We've all grown up with them. And myself personally, having grown up in the city and having reached out as a young man after my father passed away, it became very clear to me that my teammates, my coaches, my teachers, the people that came out and supported me and my family and my mother and the rest of my family were going to be crucial to my upbringing, and they were. And I learned at a very young age that people that took an interest in me had to be appreciated, and that I would not and could not have ever gotten to where I am, and many of you in this room here today would never have gotten to where you are if it hadn't have been for your coaches and your teachers and the people and the adults in your life that took an interest in you when you were a young age. And that is something I think we all have to remember. And I wanted to start this event along with Galluccio Associates in order to bring all those people together for us to take one day out of our year to look back at the people that helped us along the way. And I hope it's something we do every day, but at least one morning a year, I hope we can all do that. And you can think about that. And maybe some of them are here, and maybe some of them aren't. And if they're not, maybe you could take the time to reach out to them and give them a call in the near future and say thank you. The most important reason that we come here today is to honor the unsung heroes. Those people that give day in, day out their time to the youth of this city. And a lot of times they don't get recognized. They don't get big awards. They don't make a whole lot of money because they've chosen to lead their lives in a way that benefits young people. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of money in that business. But you know what? From my perspective, it's the most important business going. And I could not have greater respect than the people in this city that commit their time to our kids. And that's what this morning's all about. I also want to say it gives me a tremendous amount of joy to look out and see some of the people that I grew up with and played sports with. And I can remember as a very young child my father telling me that these will be the best friends of your life when we looked out onto the Little League field. And you know what? He was right. And those friends that I met playing basketball and baseball and every other sport we could get our hands on or could afford stuck by me and have been my best friends ever since. So I want to say thanks, Dad, for teaching me that lesson young. But most of all, for all of you, I know that you've learned that lesson, and I hope that we can keep teaching the young people that, because the more kids we can get out onto those fields and into organized sports, the more networks they'll build, the more friendships they'll have, and the more of a community we'll continue to have in this city. And that's the most important thing about Cambridge from my perspective. At this time, I'd like to have Pete Brock come up. He's going to be one of our guest speakers. We're expecting Ronnie Lepet. He may not be able to be here, but we're still hopeful that he will be here. We're very proud to have Pete Brock here, and I was telling him before that his era of Patriots football is my era of Patriots football. The Sam Bam Cunninghams, the Mosi Tutupus, the Russ Francis, that was Patriots football to us. The Pete Brock, well, you're here already, so I'm going to get to you. Pete Brock was born and raised in Colorado. He's a 1976 graduate of the University of Colorado, where he was an All-American. A veteran of 13 seasons with the Patriots, where he played 10 seasons at center and played every offensive position, including tight end. A Super Bowl veteran of the 1986 team, Pete is an example of how athletics and education can go so well together. Pete is the president of Systems Integrations, of a Systems Integrations company, and I think Pete is a great example of not only an athletic leader, but someone who's been a great example to other athletes as to how to make the transition from athletics into the professional world, and someone who was somewhat of an underdog who overcame great obstacles, and I think that's what this organization's about, and I'm proud to have Pete Brock here this morning.
Well, thanks for having me down here, and I'd like to give an opportunity, because I'm so far away from home, I'd like to use this as an opportunity for me to thank all the people that impacted my life. And I'll tell you, sports influenced me from the time I started it and even until this day to build the right kind of attitudes, of life models, of hard work, commitment, and dedication. So I'd like an opportunity to thank anybody out there that has volunteered, including parents, because I know what a heartache it is getting kids to the rink, getting kids to soccer practice, all of those type of things. But anyway, I would like to applaud anybody that has anything to do with kids today, because that's where it is. Thank you. Now, Renee might have been nervous coming down here and speaking in front of such a big group, but I'm on my way down, or up here from Rentham, where I live now, and I know that I'm going to be on the dais with Steve Buckley and Ronnie Lepet, and I'm listening to EEI like every fan in the world, and I'm hearing Buckley on a telephone call from Kentucky back up to here, and I'm thinking, how in the world, I hope they tape this thing. Because if I have to speak longer than 10 minutes, people are in trouble. And Ronnie's not here yet. We're hoping that he does. But just like when I'm doing some broadcasting things and the producer's going like this to lengthen it out, we'll try to have a little bit of fun with it anyway. I'd like to talk to the kids. How many kids are out there today? Let me define kids. There, they've already got a definition. How many youth are out there right now? I'd like to talk to you guys because your parents know everything anyway. So they may not learn anything from what I'm about to say, but maybe they will. I'm going to throw you guys these nuggets and see if any of this makes sense, because this is kind of what I talked about initially in that how sports had been a model, or at least an impact to me. Okay, let me do another arm raising. This is going to be a real face-to-face deal here. How many are football fans? How many are Patriot fans? Because that's a different thing. All right? How many people out there in the audience think that the Patriots' success this past season was by accident? Oh. Okay, you've just identified yourselves as Jet fans. John Hanna, arguably the best offensive guard in NFL history, lined up. Oh, and by the way, I carried him for 10 years, but I just want to... lined up next to me. We played 10 seasons together. I knew that where John was on my first step. I knew where he would be on a double team. And with free agency, a John Hanna or a me might be in Baltimore next week type of thing. And you can't have that kind of consistency with free agency. And the same reason, I think that the fan support and the organizations and companies and the whole industry and advertising to back a franchise who now has somewhat of a free agency with all these moves is equally as detrimental to the game as free agency. You've been a tremendous audience, and I appreciate your attention. I hope you can take a couple of nuggets away. And again, the reason that we're here is to applaud and award those special people who volunteer their precious time in making sure that the youth of your community have a direction, have goals, have something to do other than get in trouble and experience the positiveness of sports. Thank you very much.
Pete Brock, ladies and gentlemen. Pete, that was fantastic. Pete, thank you very much for coming this morning, and that was great. And thanks for speaking to the kids. I think it's so important. I know many of the adults realize it, but especially for the kids to realize it, that even people who've played in the Super Bowl and even the people you see on TV have had ups and downs, and that's what life's about. And the way you handle the times when you don't make the team or you don't start or you can't get out there and pitch on opening day, those are the times that you really show your character. And I'll tell you, I made some of the best friends I have in my life sitting on the bench, so I won't mention any names, but there's a few of you out there. At this time, and let me also say as we get going, I would love for everyone to take a look at the program. I think it really describes our honorees very well. And also at 11:30 last night, after I got home from the gym, I started reading the program, and I read Mario DePiero's bio, and I know Mario was truly a sports legend, but in this biography, he did everything 3 times. So I went right down to Kinko's Coffee and was up till about 1 in the morning getting it done and fixing it up. So I hope you'll take a look at it, because a lot of work went into it. Then I got home and the the Hearns Sugar Ray second fight was on Super Bouts. So of course I had to watch that, and I just want to say in front of all these people, I've never get to do this before, but Tommy Hill, there was absolutely no way that was a draw. Hearns won that fight. And he won the Hagler fight. The Hagler won the first fight too. I'd like to do a moment of silence. One, for Rocky Papaleo from the North Little League, who passed away this week. Someone who coached for years and years in the North Little League. Ended out his coaching career in his wheelchair, coaching kids, which will show what his commitment was. And also Mr. Tim Morrow passed away about 3 weeks ago, and many of you would know Tim as Handsome. And for those of us who grew up in West and North Cambridge, our childhood would not have been the same without Tim. And when I was running for office and getting involved in politics, whenever I'd go up to the truck, I'd say, this guy doesn't know who I am. He'd say, hey, Handsome. One day I said, you don't know who I am, do you? He said, Anthony, you're doing a great job. I remember you when you were with your father down at this field years ago. And the moral to that story is he remembered every single kid. And it wasn't just, hey, Handsome. He knew who you are, and he cared about you. And at this time, I'd like to have a moment of silence for those 2 gentlemen that really gave their lives to the kids of Cambridge. Thank you. As you know, some of you may know, Steve Buckley's in Kentucky. So yesterday was a rough day. He called me at about 3 and said, Anthony, you're not going to believe this. I did this story giving Larry Bird all kinds of hell for selling the Celtics out, and I'm writing about Rick Pitino, and everyone wants to know the Celtics going to get Rick Pitino. So they want to send me to Kentucky to interview Rick Pitino. But he said he really didn't want to go because he wanted to be here at the breakfast. And I said, Steve, that's fine. But this is from our friend Steve, who promises to be here next year. And this is an unedited version, although I wish I could have edited some of it. Dear Councilor Galluccio, please accept my apologies for being forced to cancel your invitation to participate in this year's Youth Sports Volunteers Recognition Breakfast. The Herald hit me up at the last second to cover the Kentucky Derby. And well, let's just say it. Given a choice between covering one of the world's premier sporting events or listening to George Greenwich talk about what it takes to make a really good sausage dog, it wasn't much of a contest. The fact is, Counselor, I found out several days ago I wouldn't be able to make the breakfast. I dashed off a note to you to explain why I wouldn't be able to attend, but for some reason I sent the note to the State House. It was returned to me, address unknown. You would have loved that. Sean will tell you about that one. For several weeks, I had been telling my old buddies from Cambridge that I was looking forward to being at the breakfast because I wanted to share in a fine event that honors a group of people who have done so much for the youth of our city. Anyway, that's what I said. The real reason I wanted to be there was because I wanted to keep track of who was cutting me up at the days. My ears were burning all the way to Louisville. By the way, is Louis DePasquale still laying it on about the Yankees? I've never been able to fathom Louis' rooting interests. He's the only guy I know who rooted for the aliens in Independence Day. I'm sure George Greenwich is going to tell you all about that I was a fat little goober during the days he was my gym teacher at the Longfellow School. That may have been true then, but I am a slim-toned 185 these days, thanks to some valuable lessons I learned from George. Exercise, get plenty of rest, and never, never eat anything that's sold from a push cart outside Fenway Park. Councilor Galluccio, you may also hear a lot of lies about what a colossal pest I was to Mario DePiero during his days as president of the Babe Ruth League. It's true that Mario had a head of hair like Harpo Marx when he took the job, and that he looked like an older version of Louis DePasquale when he left office. But I had nothing to do with it. And while we're on the subject of Mario, I've always found it interesting that he took over as president of the league just when his son was entering the league as player, and that his son was an all-star all 3 years that both he and Mario were in the league. I'm sure it was just a coincidence. Wow, you got it bad, Mario. Speaking of baseball, I'm sure Bobby Goodwin will truck out his tired old story about hitting a home run in that West Division Central League playoff game in 1971. Poor Bobby. He was so caught up in getting his butt slapped by his adoring teammates that he missed the plate. Fortunately, the umpire was from the West Division. Please pass on my congratulations to Bobby for doing the job he's been doing with the Ringe and Latin hockey team, which has been in a rebuilding season since 1953. Glad Steve's from Cambridge. It's great, isn't it? Then again, it might be dangerous to Bobby's health if the team was really, really good all of a sudden. Remember, Goody, broken bones taking longer and longer to heal as you get older. Again, thanks for inviting me to the breakfast, and please accept my apologies for the late change. In the meantime, I'm taking all action for today's race through my friend and business associate, Lou DePasquale. I'm going to quickly introduce the head table. My old friend at the far left, Armando Paolo. And I was so embarrassed because I've been calling his wife Mrs. Armando since I was 7 years old. I didn't realize. And Arnold Dobson. Chuck Mountain. Coach George Greenwich. Pete Brock, as you already know. Linda Janelle. Mr. John O'Connor. Bobby Goodwin. Mario DePiero. Renee, will you confirm right now that this is an annual event on your calendar? Thank you, Renee. Let's get down to the fun part, the reason we're here. I'd like to begin the award ceremony first by explaining, as you know, we give out first volunteer awards and then we have a coach's award each year. And you know, one of the most difficult things is to select these recipients. When you're going through a city that has the sports history that we do and trying to get recipients that go back all generations and contemporary in all sports and all areas of the city, it becomes a very difficult choice. Fortunately, we're going to be around for a long time. We're going to be able to honor a lot of people. But it's always very, very tough to choose the people we do. I'm very, very proud of the recipients last year and this year, and we're going to have many more to come. This year, we decided to have a special recognition award, not to people who volunteer specifically with kids, but people who, along with organizations like ours, just plain reach out and help kids. And whether it's financially, or by helping them with employment, or being a leader in the community. And this year, the first special recognition award is to my friend, our friend, Armando Paolo. As you may know, I grew up 2 blocks away and grew up in Armando's store when slices were, they started, listen to me, I'm telling stories about how much things cost way back when already. I'm only 29, but 25 cents, that's how much it cost when I first went in there. But Armando has been an avid supporter of West Little League way before my time, for the Padres, going way back. For years and years, he's a sponsor of Pop Warner. But more than that, every kid that goes into Armando's place feels welcome and feels like somebody appreciates them and knows exactly who they are. And that's how Armando's made us all feel growing up. And today's the day to say, hey, Armando, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to come, and it's nice to be here. I really appreciate this very, very much. And I will enjoy this with my family and I. I'm gonna get a little bit of emotion. I can't say too much because I'm a little emotional, but thank you very much. And congratulations. I want to congratulate Tony, and I will continue to support the kids in Cambridge, Pop One and the Padres or whatever they may be.
Thank you, Armando.
And I want all to congratulate. I want to congratulate all the recipients like me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Armando.
Thank you.
The next recipient, his name is John O'Connor. He's the president of Greenworks, Inc. John O'Connor is someone who, behind the scenes, over recent years, has been a great, great help to organizations like the YBA, Pop Warner, North Little League. And as you go around the city, now that you've met him here today, you'll see more and more shirts that say Greenworks Inc. or John O'Connor. And John is someone who I've met through our work with kids and who I know keeps himself going by helping out kids. And I can't tell you the number of kids that we've brought down that have needed to go to camp or were trying to go away on a cultural trip, that we've sat down with John and I leave the room and the next thing you know, the kid's gone. He's all set because John comes through. And John not only has been there for youth sports and for youth activities, but he's been a place and a leader for employment opportunities for our young people, which is really, really important, I think, right now, especially in these days, for our young people that are 18, 19, and 20, that age group that really needs our help. John O'Connor's been there for them by offering them employment opportunities and offering the city leadership to bring more jobs to our kids. So at this time, I want to say, John, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, John O'Connor.
I'm truly honored to accept this award. I honestly don't feel I deserve it. I think the parents and the teachers and the coaches and those of you who work day in and day out to make Cambridge safe for our children deserve this award, so I accept it in your honor. I must say that if a measure of any community is anything, it's how we treat our children. And that's the reason I chose to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, because I see a community pulling together to ensure that our kids are going to have a brighter tomorrow. And I got to say, if a measure of a man is what that man does for our children, I dare say that there is no greater man than Anthony Galluccio. And I mean that. And I am very, very proud to be up here today, because I think what this is all about is teamwork. I know Sean Murphy's going to laugh because he accused me of being an aging gunner out there on the basketball court. But the most important lesson you kids can learn from sports is teamwork. I know everybody wants to be a Michael Jordan, but you know, Michael Jordan is only Michael Jordan because he came through great institutions that taught him teamwork. You look at that North Carolina system that's about teamwork. We didn't even really hear too much about Michael Jordan. He was just a piece of a team until he got to the pros. So I just want to encourage all of you to keep practicing, to keep your patience about you. If you want to get good in sports, it's about teamwork, it's about practice, it's about patience. Thank you very much. It's a great honor, and God bless.
I have to say, and this is always a learning process for me, because a lot of the names that come up, I'm sometimes familiar with, sometimes not. And when names come up and people get discussed, it's a great learning process for me. And believe me when I tell you, looking back at Mario DePiero's career was a true education for me. And I have no problem saying that Mario DePiero is truly a youth sports legend. And when you look back over his bio, this man initiated the first Pop Warner program in Cambridge back before the new Pop Warner, which many of the people here worked to get going again, forced the city, lobbied the city to ensure that Little League was funded. And these are some of the things, and one of the things we always talk about with youth activities is the kids today will never know what they're missing. That's the unfortunate thing about government and youth. When you take away grammar school sports or you take away Pop Warner, the kids that grow up now, they may not know what they're missing. And that's why it takes people like us to consistently to pressure to remind people, whether it was outdoor skating when you were a kid or a Pop Warner program or after-school sports in the grammar schools, we have to continue to look back at some of the things that have occurred and try to bring on a resurgence. Mario not only brought Pop Warner to the city, he brought Senior Babe Ruth to the city. For some of you out there who played Senior Babe Ruth who may not have known that, he was the first president from Cambridge of the Middlesex Senior Babe Ruth League. He helped bring lights to Donnelly and Lindstrom Field. It goes on and on. Many of you remember us playing in the Mario DePiero tournament down at Lindstrom Field growing up. But really just an amazing person who gave most of his life in the 50s and 60s to our young people. And Mario, for that, I want to say thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Galluccio Associates for nominating me for this award. You know, it's ironic that I'm receiving an award for something that I truly enjoy doing. And in order to be successful in any endeavor, you must have good people around you. And I had a lot of good people. I would like to start with the Little League. It's going to take a little time, but I have to. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention their names. In the Little League, there was Frank Maganelli, Tony D'Onofrio, and George and Kay Marco. That was the East Division. In the Central Division, there was Phil Tortora, Johnny Normile, and Jim Hagan. In the North Division, there was Eddie Poirier, Frank Trent, the late Frank Barbera, and David Cale. In the West Division, there was Dave Sullivan, the late Peter Stiller, and the late Hedda Menz. And in Pop Warner football, I had Tony D'Onofrio. And I moved up to Babe Ruth. Had a lot of good people in Babe Ruth. We had Louis DePasquale, Steve Buckley, George Weber, the late Kay Weber, Paul Abreu, George Alexander. And when I moved up to seniors, there was Paul Abreu and Tony D'Onofrio. And finally, and the power and brains for the past 44 years, my beautiful wife. And finally, I want to thank the Recreation Department and all the good people of Cambridge whose generosity helped us to develop one of the best programs in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario.
The next recipient is Bobby Goodwin. Plain and simple, Bobby's always out there for our kids, not just in Mount Auburn, but all over the city. Bobby right now is the head coach of CRLS, and he's doing a great job. He was formerly an assistant at Matanon, and I want to say, Bobby, thank you. Come on up here.
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge my wife, Bonnie, my children, my father, my mother-in-law, and Dave Ellison. I look around the room and I just said, I've got to make mention of a few people because this has come with volunteer work and work with the city has come with some costs. I think back to 1984 and I'm in the Mayor's Cup tournament. And you know, it was in a tight game, and I really wanted to win, and I learned all from the coaches, all the coaches growing up. Mr. Paul Sullivan was my 8th grade baseball coach, and he taught me about the things and the right things to do and other things like that. And like I said, and finally, I guess in terms of my colleagues, because as I grew up and I got into the high school sports, I see Leslie Davis and Paul Sullivan and George Greenwich, former coach Bill Bates, the acting athletic director, and all of the coaches up there, and Bill Timmons, because we've all been in this, and I know Buck made comment to it, but it's all the work I've had with fine people and things I've learned from volunteers, from people that are out there that have allowed me to bear with this. And finally, I just thought to make mention, I'd like to recognize once again Paul Ryder and let him know about the fine youth golf program that I know is coming up now in the city. And all you kids back there, get the clubs, because my dad will teach you. We'll be up there. See you next year. Thank you.
Next, a great lady, Miss Linda Janelle. Linda has been a great contributor to North Little League over the past years. She has been a leader in terms of girls' sports, which is so important. Miss Linda Janelle.
I first of all want to thank Anthony Galluccio, where'd he go? Now he moved, for the honor, and I would like to thank my family. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I can't help it. And, of course, without the help of my family and my friends behind me, that I'm able to say, oh, guess what we did today, you know, and then be helpful and just keep me going, basically. I wouldn't have been able to do this. It is amazing to be able to receive an award for something that you really, really enjoy doing. And believe me, I do enjoy it, and I'll continue to do it for a long time. Thank you very much.
And you know, in Cambridge, there's always those people out there who just feel like they just never got the recognition in sports that they deserve, that maybe just missed the all-star team because there just weren't enough uniforms, or they stopped 12 minutes and 30 seconds after the 12-minute run, or 30 seconds before, and just missed getting the Presidential Achievement Award. But they always talk about it. They always talk about it. And today we wanted to acknowledge those unsung heroes, the people who we think should have been all-stars, that just weren't picked for one reason or another. And this year we have 3, if you could stand up. Mr. Paul Magliozzi, Mr. James Henry. You should have made it, Jimmy. And Mr. Derek Williams. I would have voted for you guys. I want you to know that. It's great having this microphone. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge Arnold Dobson. And in a phrase, I should just say this: Arnold is everywhere. And when I saw this gentleman driving up the street on his bike in the snow, going to a youth sporting event at the high school one morning, I knew there was something very special about Arnold Dobson. And for those who don't know him, I'm sure you do, he's on cable TV all the time, broadcasting any sporting event that he's asked to do. He's at almost every game in the city as a fan, and he coaches East Little League, he coaches Pop Warner, he coaches with Bobby Goodwin up at the high school, but he's everywhere. And if you go to a sporting event in Cambridge, a youth sporting event, you will find Arnold Dobson there. And to me, that's just what it's all about. And doing that on top of raising 2 children and working overtime most weeks, Arnold Dobson, you're the type of person we need in the city, and I want to say thank you for being there for our kids.
I don't know if I can top that. Thank you very much. I don't know about you, but I was with Anthony. I read Mario DePierro's contribution to the city of Cambridge, and I was blown away by it, seeing how much that he's done for the city of Cambridge. And I've actually been a recipient of some of the things that he helped do. I noticed that he had dealt with Cambridge Pop Warner, and I actually played Pop Warner even at my size. And noticing that he's involved in baseball. And my son played baseball in East Cambridge and got to play in the tournament play that he introduced. So myself personally, again, I want to give Mr. DePierro a round of applause because I just think that's incredible. I want to thank Anthony Galluccio, and first of all, I want to thank my mom, who, without her support, obviously I wouldn't be here. She's a little under the weather, but Mrs. Aline Dobson, that's my mom. I love her the most. She's number one. And a couple of people that I'm particularly proud of. My daughter, Tia, who's graduating from UMass Boston this year with her BA in Psychology and Women's Studies. She's going to kill me. But Tia, I love you very much. And my son, Kyle, who's a B student at CRLS. And he's on the track team there, and for him, he made a goal. And this is something that Mr. Brock was talking about. I'm calling you Mr. Brock because I was told by Sean Murphy that you and I were going to have to be in a pit together, so I'm calling you Mr. Brock to try to deal with that one. My son had set a goal. He runs on the track team, and last year he was doing his best, and that's all we ever teach. I want our kids to do is do his best, and he's been trying to do his best. And he said to me after last year, Dad, the one goal that I'm setting for myself right now in the track field is that one of these times in this coming track season that he was going to qualify for the states and the high hurdles. And I'm glad to say that I was actually at the meet in Arlington when my son was able to qualify for the state high hurdles. So he set himself for that and decided to get that done. And also want to recognize their mom, Pam, who's been a supporter for us in my life. Just a brief thing is something that Mr. Brock, you like that name? Mr. Brock had brought up is about how you gain friendships in sports. And actually, a good friend of mine through Cambridge High in Latin basketball is Mr. Kevin Crane, who's out back. We actually got to know him through Cambridge sports. And one thing that really set me off about working with children is through Mr. Balf, who was my basketball coach there. Just turned my life around. And Anthony, thank you very much. I love you all.
Actually, Arnold, come up one more second. I want to say, and I didn't mention it, Arnold's D team won the Eastern Mass Championships in Pop Warner. And let me tell you, this Pop Warner program is rolling through Eastern Massachusetts. And while he's here, we have a $1,000 check from Galluccio Associates to Cambridge Pop Warner.
He got the name wrong. It doesn't say my name on it. I want to let you know that right now.
And by the way, let's remember, we're way behind up at Russell Field. And for everyone here, I hope you go out, because there isn't a time, and we all went through it growing up in the city, whether you were swimming at the Y and we had the worst pool, or we didn't have a home field for football. We've all been out into the suburban communities and been made fun of. We've had things said. And you know what? With a $318 million budget in this city, I think we could have a nice football facility for our young people, don't you? But this isn't a political event. Next, we have two more award recipients. The next is someone who, it took me a long time to digest this, but someone who coached Little League for 16 years, and that's Chuck Mountain. And that's not only the season, but summers, and as you know, being active as not only a coach, but as a board member, as president many times, and then coaching All-Stars. Think about the around-the-clock commitment that you have to make. And Chuck Mountain has given his heart and soul to North Little League, not without the help of his family, but really the Mountains have become household names in North Cambridge when it comes to Little League. And unfortunately, Chuck retired this year and is working hard on his business and running all over the country, because he's also a very successful business person. I'm sure he could have done even better had he not chose to make the sacrifice that he did. And that's true of all these recipients here. It really is. The people here could have chosen different paths, and they didn't. And Chuck, I want to say thank you, not only from North Little League, but for the whole city for giving a very big portion of your life to the young people of Cambridge.
I want to thank the Galluccio Associates. Anthony, I think we're running behind time here, so I'll do it fast. Okay. When I started coaching many years ago, I started coaching, and I felt it was somewhat of an obligation. And an obligation because my son Christopher was already in the program in Little League, and my son Michael had just been picked up on the minor league team, and I felt like, gee, if I'm not really willing to give the time, I can't really expect other people to give the time. But once I started coaching, I realized I really loved it. This was something that I really got a lot of satisfaction out of it. I really enjoyed helping the youth of Cambridge. So I want to actually thank everybody who gave me an opportunity to do that. We've had many great coaches in Cambridge, and you've heard about them. I mean, I coached against Louis and Babe Ruth, and we've been really lucky in Cambridge to have a lot of coaches who give their time and everything for the city, and I'm really honored to be here today with many coaches who have done that, and it's a great honor. I'd also like to thank Anthony and the Galluccio Associates, not only for this award, but mainly for all the time and effort Anthony was talking about Arnold, and you're right, I see Arnold every event I go to, but right next to Arnold is Anthony. So, I mean, I'd also like to thank Anthony for all of his efforts. I'd like to thank my family. My wife, Flo, of 30, she's been my wife for 30 years. I'd like to thank my son Chris, my son Michael, and my daughter Melissa. They've all been involved in the program. But I'd really like to thank them for understanding the time and the commitment, because that's what it takes. It takes time and commitment, and I really appreciate their understanding. I'd like to thank all of the players who played for me. I hope they enjoyed playing for me as much as I enjoyed coaching them. I'd like to thank the coaches and the officials, mainly in Little League, because that's what I've been involved in, as Anthony said, for 16 years. I'd like I'd like to single out one person. He's somebody that we always poke fun at because he's so easy and he's a big target. Okay, but I'd like to thank David Cale. Okay. And I'd like to just close and thank my coaching, the coaches who coach with me. You can't have any success with coaching with youth if you do it by yourself. It's much more. First, it's more fun, and you need the support. So I'd like to thank Mike Hogan. Mike has coached with us for 12 years, and Mike is the unsung hero of the Dodgers. All successes that the Dodgers have, Mike has been a part of. He doesn't always get the credit, so thank you very much, Mike. And last, I'd like to thank my son, Michael. Michael has been a coach with us 10 years. He started when he was 14 years old, right while he was in Babe Ruth. As the people in North Cambridge know, I'm not a big advocate of coaching your son, but I have to say coaching with your son is the greatest experience I ever had. I've really enjoyed coaching with him. I started out as the coach, as the mentor, and anybody who's followed Little League knows for the last few years I've been the student and he's been the teacher. So I really want to thank you, and thanks, Michael, for everything. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, the Coach's Award. And I'm going to refer this year to the Coach's Award as my coach, because George Greenwich, to me, epitomized everything it was to be a football coach. And let me start where it started for me, and I think it shows exactly what George Greenwich is all about. My junior year, I didn't have brothers that played football, so I didn't have anyone at home telling me that how bad practices were, and how double sessions were terrible, but just stick in there because you're going to love the games. I mean, some of my friends told me, but who believes that? I mean, football practice is the worst. Let's admit it. And unless you have someone there telling you, stick in there because you're going to love the games, you tend to want to walk away. And I did. Really, the first sport that I ever walked away from. And I can remember walking up Concord Ave my junior year of that summer. And I said, I just play fall baseball and, concentrate on baseball. And the bus went by, and I heard, Galluccio! And it was his high, shrill voice. And I saw the school bus, and I said, oh, man. So Greenwich, up on the curb, who cares who's around, traffic, it didn't matter. He gets out, stops the bus, puts his arm around me and says, Anthony, we need you. You got to be on this team. Your father and my father were best friends. This is tradition. You have to play for me. You have to be part of this team. And I went back, and I can tell you, you mentioned sports injuries before. Well, I'll tell you, I would never trade this knee with 4 screws and 4 operations for not having played football for George Greenwich at Cambridge Ringe and Latin. And George, I want to say thank you for taking an interest in me. And I wasn't the only one, because George Greenwich knew. He was one of those coaches, and If you coach in the inner city, like a lot of you do, you know there's a real fine line here. That if you yell at a kid at the wrong time, when you may not know what's going on at home, or what they're facing at a place that you may not observe them in, you can lose them. And there's a time to yell, and there's a time to discipline, and there's a time to put your arm around that kid and maybe overlook an outburst or something that was said because you just don't know what's going on at home or what's going on in their head. And Mr. Greenwich just knew when to do that. And playing football in Cambridge wasn't easy. When you're playing over at Brighton Field, you have no home field, you're not winning games, people in school are making fun of you for playing on the team. And it was one guy that made you feel like you were part of something special, and that was my coach, and that was George Greenwich. But I want to tell you a few quick stories, some outside of sports, some in sports, that I think make George Greenwich the special person he is. Joe Colanino, the former assistant coach, through his son, and we honored Joe last year, great guy. His son Anthony called me last night, told me a quick story. George Greenwich, Mr. Colanino decide they're going to go over to Harvard Stadium when the Boston Patriots are playing the Minnesota Vikings over at Harvard. So they're over there, and they're both bragging, like many of us do in Cambridge, about who can get the best seat after they sneak in to Harvard Stadium. Colanino knows that he knows the guy taking the tickets. He knows the usher at the 50-yard line. He's finally got Greenwich. Greenwich is sunk. Fine, George, we'll go to the game. Whoever wins will buy something for them later on that day. So they go in. Colanino makes his move. George, I'll see you. They're outside the stadium. See you later on. Goes in, finds his seat right at the 50-yard line and sits there, and he's very proud and he's smiling. He can't find Greenwich. Now he says, I got to gloat here. I want to have some fun with this. I got to find Greenwich. So he goes around the stadium and he looks. It's the third quarter. He still doesn't find Greenwich. So he's finally getting ready to leave. He's on the Minnesota Vikings side. He's looking down at the field. He sees one of the Viking players waving at him. It's George Greenwich with Carl Elwood's jacket on, sitting on the Minnesota Vikings bench. Greenwich welcomed the Minnesota Vikings as they got off the bus, took their equipment and said, "Follow me, I'll bring you into the stadium." Here's one from, as Joe and I remember, Greenwich's big things. Greenwich loved to torture people in Harvard Square. I mean, to him, that was everything. The fact that this was a contact sport made up of very aggressive inner-city young people, most of whom people in Harvard Square would just assume never come in contact with during their lifetime experience. Greenwich sucked that up, and he loved going through Harvard Square on that bus after practice was over. When Joe and I were there, his big thing was tip the bus. He'd start chanting, "What we're going to do, what we're going to do, we're going to tip, tip." Next thing you know, he'd be up on one side, we'd all be on one side trying to tip the bus going into the tunnel, and there'd be some poor Vauxhall bus driver just looking back saying, "Mr. Greenwich, stop, please. It's going to tip this time. It's going to tip." But a better bus story than that. I mean, you had more fun back with Ringe Tech, I think, because this was the best. I got a call from someone last week who said, "How's this for a George Greenwich story?" Greenwich all year, and let me just note, George Greenwich, 1974, 8-2, Ringe Tech, 1975, 9-1. This far away from Super Bowl bids. Ringe Technical School back then. And this guy called me, he said this was the height of George Greenwich's enthusiasm. I mean, he was there. He was a young coach, he had great assistants around him, and he was ready to go. He had it on his mind the whole season, outside of thinking of how to beat all these teams, that he wanted to drive the bus. And every day he tortured the bus driver. "Can I drive the bus today? Can I drive the bus today?" Finally, the bus driver said, "Fine, just drive the bus, just don't tell anyone. I know you're going to get me in trouble if I can't take it anymore. Greenwich takes the wheel. They head towards the high school. They go by an MBTA stop. There's a woman waiting for a bus. Greenwich pulls over. Only he could get her to come on to a school bus with 50 dirty, smelly, Ringe Technical football players. She gets on the bus. Obviously just moved into Cambridge recently. Gets on the bus. Greenwich takes her to Harvard Square, goes under the tunnel, drops her off underneath the tunnel, pulls back out down on Mount Auburn Street, and back to the high school. Practice is over. Two more quick ones. And Joe and I were talking. Nobody got a bigger kick out of the size of cockroaches at the War Memorial than Greenwich. I said to Joe, I mean, we have so many memories. And Joe said, you know, man, I really think that the one time when I really knew that Greenwich loved all of life, not just human life, but animal life as well, when he went in to ask George about a play that was coming up that game, and Greenwich is in the coach's room feeding what he's claiming to be the biggest cockroach that he's ever found at the War Memorial. So I'm assuming we just ran fullback at 4 probably, Joe, right? Okay, one more. What epitomizes a coach that wants to teach young people about what a real team is? What it really is to be a team, not just the starters, not just the star running back or the star wide receiver. But when George Greenwich, and many people laugh at this, I don't laugh at it, because to me, it teaches an even greater lesson than sticking in there and playing football itself. But when we went to play Don Bosco, and George decided about 5 minutes before the game, and if you talk to the coaches about this, it was a last-second decision. I'm sure he knew he was going to do it all season, but no one else knew that the team manager, Rocky Normile, was kicking off that day against Don Bosco. And you know, it's funny, but at the same time, it made every person on that field realize that it was about a lot more than winning. And everyone that knew Rocky knew he gave his heart and soul to sports in Cambridge. And only George realized that he had to allow Rocky to kick off and make sure that he lived his dream. And guys like Tommy Haley and other coaches out there that looked out for Rocky, to me, that's what Cambridge was all about. Unfortunately, he drove a great kick. The problem was, he watched it. He stared at that ball. Pat Gavello told me that he decided he was going to key in on Rocky, and Rocky stood there and watched that ball like it was a beautiful fireworks going off on the 4th of July, and somebody from Don Bosco nailed him off his feet, and they ran it back for a touchdown. But what's more important than Rocky kicking it off, George? That's a vintage George Greenwich. Now, we played my junior year when we didn't win a game. And in the game against Brookline, I destroyed my knee. And I was out for a long time and, you know, had surgery and the whole thing. And we were told never to play football again, but I wanted to play so bad. And I did play. But after I got hurt in Brookline, I was lying on the sidelines with my leg up, and one of the Brookline players intercepted the next pass after I got carted off the field. And he decided that he was going to run through the Cambridge line next to where I was and stick the ball in my face while I had my leg up. So I thought, wow, that was nice, and I never forgot that. And my senior year, when we were going to play Brookline again, and I think we were 0-7. We hadn't won a game in about 2 years, and I went to George in the morning and I said, Mr. G, you know, I want to say a few words to the team today. And he said, no, Gooch, you don't have to. I'm going to say a few words to the team today. And I was disappointed because I didn't think he knew what I was thinking and didn't understand what I was feeling and what I wanted to say. And like every other